I'm Jessica Martinez, 32 years old, a graphic designer working from home in Austin, Texas. The craftsman-style house in Hyde Park where I lived with my in-laws had become more than just a place to sleep. It was my canvas, my sanctuary, the one constant in a life that had weathered more storms than I ever imagined. Every creaky floorboard I had replaced, every wall I had painted in the early morning light before client deadlines, every corner of that house whispered promises of permanence. I believed in those promises with everything I had. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Then came that suffocating evening in late September when the Texas heat hadn't quite broken, and we sat around the dinner table picking at enchiladas that tasted like ash in my mouth. My mother-in-law Patricia slammed her water glass down so hard I thought it might shatter. The sound cut through the ceiling fan's lazy rotation and made time itself seem to stop. "You have 48 hours to pack your things and leave," she said, her voice cold and mechanical. "This house belongs to Vanessa now. Your sister gets everything." My father-in-law Robert sat across from me, fork suspended halfway to his mouth, and he simply nodded once. That single nod felt like a judge's gavel sealing my fate. No discussion, no explanation, just a decree handed down as if I were a tenant who had overstayed my welcome, rather than family who had kept this entire household from collapsing. Vanessa, my younger sister who had been living her perfect life in Phoenix for the past 5 years, who maybe called 3 times a year if I was lucky, who had never once asked how we were managing, or if we needed help. She was inheriting the house that I had saved, restored, and loved. I sat frozen in my chair, staring at the Saltillo tile flooring I had helped install 2 summers ago when the old linoleum finally gave up. My chest tightened like someone had wrapped iron bands around my ribs and was slowly turning a crank. The ceiling fan kept spinning, indifferent to the bomb that had just detonated my entire world. Patricia returned to cutting her food as if she had just commented on the weather. Robert took a long drink of his iced tea. The normalcy of their movements felt obscene. I thought about the mortgage payments. I thought about the new roof. I thought about the endless weekends spent in hardware stores picking out fixtures and paint samples. I thought about my grandmother Elena's face the last time I saw her alive, sitting on that wide front porch in the swing I had repaired, telling me this house would always be my home. They were erasing all of it with a sentence, as casually as deleting a file on a computer. Something shifted inside me in that moment. It wasn't anger yet, though that would come later. It was clarity, cold and sharp as a January morning. I stood up from the table without a word, my chair scraping against the tile. Patricia glanced up with irritation at the noise, but I was already walking away. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, the one I had painted a soft sage green, and closed the door with deliberate gentleness. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone, but my mind was oddly calm, already beginning to calculate and plan. They thought they had broken me. They thought I would simply fold, pack my bags, and disappear into whatever small apartment I could afford on short notice. They had no idea what I was capable of when pushed into a corner. In 48 hours, when Vanessa walked through that front door expecting to claim her unearned inheritance, she was going to discover exactly what happened when you tried to steal from someone who had given everything. The morning after that horrible dinner, I woke up before dawn with my grandmother's face still fresh in my mind. Our Austin house sat quiet in those early hours, my in-laws still asleep in their bedroom down the hall. I had barely managed 3 hours of rest, my brain too wired with racing thoughts and half-formed plans. But lying there in the dark waiting for answers felt impossible, so I got up, made coffee strong enough to strip paint, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, trying to piece together how my life had come to this point. 8 years ago, when my grandmother Elena first invited me to move into this Hyde Park Craftsman, after I graduated from State University, it felt like a gift from heaven. I was fresh out of school with a graphic design degree, drowning in student loans, and sleeping on a friend's couch while trying to build my freelance business. Grandma Elena had lived alone since my grandfather passed a decade before, and she said the house felt too big, too empty. She wanted family around her. She wanted me, I moved into the upstairs bedroom that faced the street, the one with the large windows that caught the morning light perfectly. Grandma Elena would make breakfast tacos every Sunday, and we would sit on the front porch watching neighbors walk their dogs. She taught me about the oak tree in the backyard, the one she and my grandfather had planted when they first bought the house in 1973. She showed me which floorboards were original and which had been replaced after a pipe burst in the 80s. The house had history, had stories embedded in every wall stud and roof beam. When Grandma Elena passed away 3 years ago, I felt like someone had carved out part of my chest. The funeral was small, just family, and I remember standing in the backyard by that oak tree, unable to stop crying. My in-laws Robert and Patricia, who I had married into just a year before through my brief marriage to their son David, attended the service. My sister Vanessa flew in from Phoenix for exactly 2 days, spent most of that time on her phone, dealing with real estate clients, and flew back out without once asking what would happen to the house. After the funeral, Robert and Patricia approached me with what seemed like a reasonable proposal. They were facing serious financial problems. Robert had been laid off from his position as an operations manager at a manufacturing company, and Patricia's part-time work as a bookkeeper wasn't enough to cover their rent and expenses. They had been living in a cramped apartment in South Austin, struggling to make ends meet. Would I consider letting them move into Grandma Elena's house with me? They could help with expenses, keep me company, and we could be a family unit supporting each other. I said yes without hesitation. My marriage to their son David had already fallen apart by then, ending in a quiet divorce that nobody really wanted to discuss, but I still considered Robert and Patricia family. They had been kind to me during the marriage, and I genuinely wanted to help them. I never imagined that decision would eventually lead to me being forced out of my own home. The financial crisis hit them harder than they initially admitted. 6 months after they moved in, Robert still hadn't found steady work, and Patricia's bookkeeping clients were few and far between. Bills started piling up, the property taxes came due, and they had nothing to contribute. The mortgage that Grandma Elena had been paying suddenly became a weight around all our necks. That was when I stepped up in a way I never thought I would have to. I had been building my graphic design business steadily, taking on corporate clients, doing branding work for Austin startups, designing everything from logos to entire marketing campaigns. The work was good, and the money was better than I expected. So when the bills came and Robert and Patricia looked at me with desperation in their eyes, I opened my bank account and started paying. First it was the property tax.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
$6,200 that wiped out a chunk of my savings. Then it was the mortgage, $1,400 a month, that I suddenly carried alone. Then it was utilities, repairs, groceries, and everything else that kept a household running. I specifically remember the day the mortgage company called threatening foreclosure. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was in the middle of a design presentation for a tech client. My phone kept buzzing, and when I finally answered during a break, a curt voice informed me that we were 3 months behind on payments and legal action was being initiated. My stomach dropped. Robert had assured me he was handling the mortgage with money from a temporary job he had picked up. He had lied, or maybe he had tried and failed, and was too ashamed to admit it. I drove home that afternoon, and found Robert sitting at the kitchen table, his head in his hands, surrounded by past due notices he had been hiding. Patricia stood by the counter crying quietly. "We're going to lose everything," she kept saying. "We're going to be homeless." The fear in her voice was real, and it cut through me. These were people I cared about, people who had nowhere else to go, people who had welcomed me into their family even after their son and I divorced. I made the decision that would change everything. I called the mortgage company back, got the total amount owed, and paid it in full from my savings. $11,000 gone in a single transaction. Then I set up automatic payments from my account to ensure it never happened again. I took over the property taxes completely. I paid for the new roof when the old one started leaking during a spring storm, another $8,000. I covered the cost of updating the electrical system, when an inspector said the wiring was a fire hazard waiting to happen, 6,000 more. Over the span of 3 years, I poured more than $95,000 into keeping that house standing and keeping my in-laws housed. I never asked for repayment. I never demanded they contribute beyond their occasional grocery run or utility payment when they could manage it. I did it because I thought we were family, because I thought the house was my inheritance from Grandma Elena, because I believed that investing in our shared home was investing in our shared future. But I did more than just pay bills. I physically transformed that house into something special. The living room had been dark and outdated when Grandma Elena passed, still decorated with furniture from the 90s and wallpaper that had yellowed with age. I spent an entire month stripping that wallpaper, repairing the plaster underneath, and painting the walls a warm cream color that made the space feel twice as large. I bought a new sofa, a gorgeous mid-century modern piece in charcoal gray that I found at an estate sale and had reupholstered. I installed new light fixtures throughout the house, replacing the old brass ones with updated brushed nickel. The kitchen became my pride and joy. I saved for 8 months to afford the renovation, working extra hours and taking on rush jobs that paid premium rates. I replaced the ancient laminate countertops with granite, installed a new farmhouse sink, and put in stainless steel appliances that actually worked instead of the avocado green relics from the 70s. I tiled the backsplash myself, watching YouTube videos to learn the technique, spending my weekends covered in grout dust and mortar. When it was finished, that kitchen looked like something from a home design magazine. I converted the detached garage into my design studio, my professional workspace where I met with clients and produced my best work. I ran electricity out there, installed proper insulation and drywall, put in a heating and cooling unit so I could work year-round, and furnished it with a custom desk, professional lighting, and all my equipment. That studio represented my career, my independence, my future. I had invested $12,000 into that conversion alone. Every improvement I made felt like I was honoring Grandma Elena's memory, like I was taking the foundation she had built and making it even better. I would sometimes stand in the backyard at sunset, looking at the house with its fresh paint and new windows, and feel this deep sense of accomplishment. I had saved this place. I had made it beautiful. I had kept it in the family. My sister Vanessa, meanwhile, had essentially vanished from our lives. After she moved to Phoenix 5 years ago to take a job with a major real estate brokerage, her visits stopped completely. She would call maybe twice a year, usually around major holidays, and the conversations were always surface level and brief. How's the weather? How's work? Great. Talk to you later. She never asked about the house, never asked about Robert and Patricia, never offered to help with anything. I tried to include her. I really did. When I renovated the kitchen, I sent her photos, excited to share the transformation. She responded 3 days later with a thumbs up emoji. When I told her about taking over the mortgage payments, she laughed and said, "That's very generous of you, Jessica," in a tone that suggested she thought I was being foolish. When I invited her to visit and see all the changes, she said she was too busy with work, her calendar completely booked with property showings and client meetings. The irony of my sister being a real estate agent, while showing zero interest in our family's actual real estate, was not lost on me. She spent her days helping strangers find homes, while ignoring the one that had been in our family for decades. But I told myself it didn't matter. She had her life in Arizona, and I had mine here in Texas. We were just different people with different priorities. I sat at that kitchen table the morning after the devastating dinner announcement, my coffee going cold as I stared at my phone. The house felt different now, like the walls themselves had turned against me. Every surface I had refinished, every corner I had painted, seemed to mock my naivety. How had I been so blind? I kept replaying Patricia's words in my head, the cold finality in her voice when she told me I had 48 hours, not a week, not a month to find a place, 48 hours, as if I were being evicted from a hotel room, rather than the home I had saved from ruin. My hands were still shaking slightly from adrenaline and lack of sleep as I scrolled through my contacts. There was only one person I trusted completely to help me navigate this nightmare, someone who would understand both the emotional devastation and the potential legal angles. Nicole Harper had been my roommate during our junior and senior years at State University, back when we were both struggling through late-night study sessions and living on ramen noodles. After graduation, she had gone into paralegal work, landing a position at a respected law firm in downtown Austin. We had stayed close over the years, meeting for coffee at least twice a month, texting regularly about everything from work stress to dating disasters. I hit her number and listened to the phone ring, praying she was awake this early. Nicole answered on the third ring, her voice slightly groggy. "Jessica, it's not even 7 in the morning. What's wrong?" The concern in her tone immediately brought tears to my eyes, and I had to take a shaky breath before I could speak. "I need your help," I managed to say. "Something happened with Robert and Patricia, something really bad." Nicole's voice instantly sharpened, all traces of sleep vanishing. "I'm listening, tell me everything." So I did. I poured out the entire story, starting with last night's dinner announcement and working backwards through the years of financial support, the renovations, the mortgage payments, everything. Nicole didn't interrupt, just let me talk, and I could hear her moving around on her end, probably getting out of bed and making coffee of her own. When I finally finished, there was a long pause. "Okay," Nicole said slowly, and I could practically hear her brain working through the problem. "First question, and this is important. Do you have any documentation about the house ownership? Any paperwork from when your grandmother passed away?" I frowned, trying to remember. "I assumed everything went to my parents after she died," I said. "But honestly, nobody ever showed me any official documents. There was a funeral, we grieved, and then Robert and Patricia needed help. I never thought to ask about a will or estate paperwork." Nicole made a humming sound that I recognized as her thinking noise. "Jessica, this is crucial. Your grandmother owned that house outright, correct? No mortgage when she died." I confirmed that yes, Grandma Elena had paid off the mortgage years before her death. The house had been free and clear. Nicole's voice took on an edge of excitement. "Then there had to be a will or some kind of estate settlement. Property doesn't just magically transfer. Give me a few hours. I'm going to make some calls and check some records. Don't do anything drastic yet, and definitely don't sign any papers if Robert and Patricia suddenly present you with something. Understood?" I promised I wouldn't sign anything and thanked her profusely. After we hung up, I felt a tiny spark of something that might have been hope. If there was documentation out there about Grandma Elena's wishes, maybe this situation wasn't as hopeless as it seemed. But I also knew I couldn't just sit around waiting. I needed to start protecting myself and my interests, whatever form that took. I spent the next hour walking through the house with my phone, methodically photographing every room, every improvement I had made, every piece of furniture I had purchased. I took pictures of the kitchen with its granite countertops and new appliances. I photographed the living room with my carefully chosen sofa and the entertainment center I had bought. I documented my converted garage studio, making sure to capture my professional equipment, my custom desk, everything that represented my business investment. Each photo felt like I was building evidence for a case I didn't yet fully understand. Then I went to my bedroom and pulled out the filing cabinet where I kept all my financial records. I'm obsessively organized when it comes to money, probably a trait I inherited from Grandma Elena, who used to balance her checkbook to the penny every month. I had bank statements going back years, showing every mortgage payment I had made, every property tax payment, every major expense. I had receipts for the roof replacement, the electrical work, the kitchen renovation. I had invoices from contractors, purchase orders from appliance stores, credit card statements showing furniture purchases. The paper trail was extensive and detailed. I created a folder on my laptop and started scanning documents, organizing everything by category and date. Mortgage payments in one folder, renovations in another, utilities and maintenance in a third. The process was tedious but calming, giving me something concrete to focus on, rather than the swirling anxiety in my chest. By mid-morning, I had a comprehensive digital archive of my financial investment in the house. The numbers were staggering when I added them up. $97,000, $432 over 3 years, not counting smaller expenses I hadn't kept receipts for. Around 10:30, my phone buzzed with a text from Nicole, "Found something, calling you in 5. My heart started racing again. Those 5 minutes felt like an eternity. I paced the kitchen, looking out the window at the backyard, where Grandma Elena's oak tree stood strong and steady. That tree had been there for over 50 years, had weathered droughts and storms and ice, and it was still standing. I needed to be like that tree right now, rooted strong, unbending. When Nicole called back, her voice was tight with barely contained urgency. "Jessica, you need to sit down for this. I'm not even kidding. Sit down." I pulled out a kitchen chair, my legs suddenly feeling weak. "What did you find?" Nicole took a breath. "I called a colleague who works in estate law, someone I trust completely. I asked him to do me a favor and check the Travis County Clerk's office records for your grandmother's estate. Jessica, there was a will, a very specific legally binding will that was filed 4 years ago, a full year before your grandmother passed away." My mouth went dry. "What did it say?" Nicole's voice was steady, but I could hear the anger underneath. "Your grandmother left the house to you, not to your parents, not to Robert and Patricia, not to Vanessa. To you, Jessica Martinez, specifically named as the sole heir to the property located on that Hyde Park address. The will was signed, notarized, and witnessed by 2 people who weren't family members, which makes it legally solid. It was filed with the county clerk as required by Texas law." I couldn't breathe. The kitchen seemed to tilt around me. "That's not possible," I whispered. "Nobody ever said anything about a will. Robert and Patricia never mentioned it. My parents never mentioned it. How could this exist, and nobody told me?" Nicole's voice turned hard. "Because someone deliberately kept it from you. Robert and Patricia would have had access to this information as the people living in the house after your grandmother's death. They could have easily obtained a copy of the will from the clerk's office. They chose not to tell you. They chose to let you believe the house belonged to them, so they could eventually give it to Vanessa." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. I had to lean forward, putting my head between my knees, because the room was spinning. "They knew," I said, my voice breaking. "This whole time, they knew Grandma Elena left the house to me, and they let me pay for everything, let me pour my savings into it, all while planning to give it to my sister. Nicole, they watched me spend nearly $100,000 on a house that was legally mine, and they never said a word." "I know," Nicole said quietly. "I know, and it's unconscionable, but Jessica, this is actually good news for you. This will is ironclad. You have legal rights to this property. They can't just kick you out and hand it to Vanessa. We can challenge this. We can fight back, but we need to act quickly." I wiped my eyes, anger starting to burn through the shock and hurt. "What do I need to do?" Nicole was all business now. "First, I'm going to get an official certified copy of that will from the clerk's office today. Second, you need to document everything you've paid for, and every improvement you've made. It sounds like you're already doing that, which is smart. Third, we need to think about your immediate situation. You said they gave you 48 hours. That's tomorrow evening. Do you have somewhere safe you can stay?" I hadn't even thought that far ahead. "I guess I can get a hotel room, or maybe crash with a friend." Nicole made a negative sound. "Better idea. You can stay at my place. I have a spare room, and this way we can work on your case together without you having to worry about where you're sleeping. Pack a bag with your essentials, your laptop, important documents, but Jessica, and this is critical, don't leave that house completely empty-handed. If there are items you personally purchased, items you can prove are yours, you have every right to take them with you." The idea crystallized in my mind immediately. The furniture, the appliances, my studio equipment, everything I had bought with my own money. Why should Vanessa walk into a fully furnished house when she hadn't contributed a single dollar? Why should Robert and Patricia get to keep the benefits of my investments while simultaneously kicking me out? Nicole must have heard something in my silence, because she spoke carefully. "I'm not telling you to strip the house bare or do anything illegal, but if you purchased items with your own money, and you have receipts to prove it, those items are legally yours. You're entitled to take your property with you." "I'm going to need a moving truck," I said, my voice steady now. the shock transforming into cold determination. Nicole, I bought that sofa, that television, the washer and dryer, the kitchen appliances, the furniture in my bedroom, all the equipment in my studio. I have receipts for everything. If Robert and Patricia want to give Vanessa an empty house, that's what she's going to get, a hollow shell. She can furnish it herself. There was a pause. Then Nicole laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. It was sharp and approving. That's my girl. Document everything you take with photographs, and match them to your receipts. Make it airtight. I'll draft an affidavit detailing your financial contributions to the property. We'll get it notarized. And Jessica, don't feel guilty about this. They brought this on themselves. Every single bit of it. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long moment, my grandmother's old coffee mug in my hands. It was chipped and faded, a souvenir from some tourist trap in Galveston that she had bought decades ago and used every single morning. I remembered watching her drink her coffee from this mug, sitting in this kitchen, telling me stories about her life. She used to say that family was the most important thing in the world, but she also used to say that family meant people who showed up for you, who stood by you, who proved their love through actions rather than just words. Robert and Patricia hadn't shown up for me. They had used me, lied to me, and were now trying to discard me. That wasn't family, that was betrayal. And Vanessa, who had abandoned us all to pursue her career in Phoenix, who couldn't be bothered to visit or call or care, she definitely wasn't showing up, yet she was the one being rewarded with everything. I stood up, washed Grandma Elena's mug carefully, and set it aside. That mug was coming with me. It was one of the few things in this house that had belonged to her personally, and I wasn't leaving it behind for people who had dismissed her final wishes. Then I pulled out my laptop and started searching for moving companies in Austin. I needed professionals who could work fast, who wouldn't ask too many questions, and who could help me reclaim what was mine. I found a company called Riverside Moving and Storage with excellent reviews and availability. Their website promised same-day service for urgent moves. I called their main number, and a friendly voice answered. Riverside Moving, this is Danny speaking. How can I help you today? I explained that I needed a rush moving job, possibly as soon as this afternoon or tomorrow morning. Could they accommodate that? Danny asked me to hold while he checked the schedule, and I could hear him typing in the background. We actually have a crew available this afternoon, if you need it that urgently, he said when he came back on the line. It'll be a premium rate for the short notice, but we can definitely help you out. Where are you located, and what are we moving? I gave him the Hyde Park address, and started listing items. A full-size sofa, an entertainment center with a large flat-screen television, a complete bedroom set including mattress and frame, a washer and dryer, kitchen appliances, including a refrigerator and dishwasher, and all the contents of a converted garage studio, including professional equipment and furniture. Danny whistled low. That's a substantial move. Are we talking about a full household relocation? Not exactly, I said carefully. I'm removing my personal property from a shared living situation. Everything I'm taking, I purchased myself, and I have documentation to prove ownership. There was a brief pause, and I could tell Danny was trying to read between the lines. Understood, he said professionally. We don't need the details, ma'am. If you say it's your property, that's good enough for us. I can have a 3-man crew and a truck at your location by 2 o'clock this afternoon. Does that work? It worked perfectly. I gave him my contact information and credit card details for the deposit. After we hung up, I looked at the clock. It was just past 11 in the morning. I had 3 hours before the movers arrived. 3 hours to finalize my list, to make absolutely sure I wasn't taking anything that wasn't rightfully mine, to prepare for what was going to be a very dramatic afternoon. Robert and Patricia were still gone, having left early that morning for their trip to San Antonio to visit old friends. They wouldn't be back until late evening, which gave me a window of opportunity. They had probably expected me to spend these 48 hours panicking, scrambling to find an apartment, maybe begging them to reconsider. They had no idea I was going to use this time to systematically dismantle their plans. I went through the house room by room, placing sticky notes on every item I intended to take. The process was methodical and strangely satisfying. In the living room, I tagged the sofa I had saved 8 months to buy, the coffee table I had found at an antique store, and refinished myself. The entertainment center and television I had purchased when the old tube TV finally died. The built-in bookshelves stayed because they were part of the house, but the books on them were mine, so I started packing those into boxes I found in the garage. In the kitchen, the situation was more complicated. The granite countertops and tile backsplash were permanent improvements I couldn't remove without damaging the house, and I wasn't interested in vandalism. But the appliances were a different story. The stainless steel refrigerator had cost me $1,800. The dishwasher had been $1,000. Those were coming with me. I tagged them both, making notes on my phone about the model numbers and purchase dates so I could match them to receipts later. The washer and dryer in the laundry room were definite takes. I had bought them 2 years ago when the old machines finally gave up, spending $2,200 on a high-efficiency set that I had researched for weeks. I put sticky notes on both of them, then stood back and looked at the empty spaces they would leave. Good. Let Robert and Patricia explain to Vanessa why she would have to hand wash her clothes or go to a laundromat. My bedroom was easier because everything in it was obviously mine. The bed frame and mattress, the dresser, the nightstands, the lamp, the rug, even the curtains I had hung. I had moved into this room with nothing but a suitcase when I first came to live with Grandma Elena, and over the years I had turned it into a comfortable personal space. All of that was going with me. I started packing my clothes and personal items into suitcases, working efficiently. The converted garage studio was my professional space, and there was no question about any of it. My custom-built desk that I had commissioned from a local carpenter, my professional computer and monitor setup, my graphics tablet and equipment, the comfortable chair I had invested in to save my back during long work sessions, the filing cabinets with my client files, the mini fridge I kept stocked with drinks, the small sofa where clients sometimes sat during consultations. Every single item in that studio represented my business, my career, my independence. It was all mine, and it was all leaving. I took photographs of everything I was planning to take, making sure the sticky notes were visible in each shot. Then I photographed the receipts I had for each item, creating a matched set of documentation. If anyone questioned my right to take these things, I would have undeniable proof of ownership. The process took over an hour, but I was thorough. This wasn't just about moving my belongings. This was about establishing a paper trail, protecting myself legally, and making a statement about what happened when people tried to take advantage of my generosity. Around 1:30, I was in the kitchen making a sandwich for lunch when I heard a knock at the front door. My heart jumped. The movers weren't supposed to be here for another half hour, and I wasn't expecting anyone else. I approached the door cautiously and peered through the peephole to see Mrs. Dorothy Kim standing on the front porch, holding a covered dish. Mrs. Kim was our neighbor from 3 houses down, a sweet woman in her mid-60s who had lived in Hyde Park for over 30 years. She had known my grandmother well, and they used to have coffee together every week. After Grandma Elena passed away, Mrs. Kim had continued to check on me regularly, always bringing homemade Korean food and asking how I was managing. I genuinely liked her, which made what I was about to do even more complicated. I opened the door and tried to smile. "Hi, Mrs. Kim, what brings you by?" She held up the covered dish. "Kimchi jjigae. I made too much and thought you might like some." Her sharp eyes studied my face. "You look tired, Jessica. Is everything okay?" I hesitated, not sure how much to tell her. Mrs. Kim had always been kind, but she was also friendly with Robert and Patricia. I didn't know where her loyalties would fall if she knew about the situation. "Things are a bit complicated right now," I said carefully, accepting the dish. "Thank you so much for this. You're always so thoughtful." Mrs. Kim didn't move from the porch. She glanced past me into the house, and I realized she could probably see some of the sticky notes I had placed on furniture. "Jessica," she said quietly, "if something is wrong, you can tell me. Your grandmother and I were very close." She would want me to look out for you. Something in her tone, the genuine concern and the invocation of my grandmother's memory, made my defenses crack. I stepped aside. Do you have a few minutes? I could use someone to talk to. Mrs. Kim came inside, and we sat at the kitchen table. I told her everything: the dinner announcement, the 48-hour ultimatum, Vanessa getting the house despite never being here, Nicole's discovery of Grandma Elena's will, and my decision to take my belongings before I left. Mrs. Kim listened without interrupting, her expression growing increasingly troubled. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Your grandmother would be so angry if she knew about this, she said firmly. Elena loved you very much. She used to tell me all the time how proud she was of you, how hard you worked, how you were the one who really cared about family. She specifically wanted you to have this house. She told me that herself, years before she died. My eyes filled with tears. She did. Mrs. Kim nodded vigorously. Oh yes, many times. She worried about your sister, thought Vanessa was too focused on money and success, and not enough on what really mattered. But you, she believed you understood what this house represented. The history, the family, the love that went into it. She wanted you to have that foundation. I wiped at my eyes, overwhelmed. I wish she had told me directly. Mrs. Kim smiled sadly. She thought she had time. She thought the will would speak for itself. She trusted that her wishes would be honored. She didn't account for people being dishonest. We sat in silence for a moment, then Mrs. Kim spoke again. You're doing the right thing, taking your belongings. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty about it. You gave and gave to people who only took. Your grandmother wouldn't want you to be a doormat. She raised you to be strong. I thanked her, feeling fortified by her words. Mrs. Kim stayed for a few more minutes, sharing stories about Grandma Elena that made me laugh through my tears, then left with a promise to check on me after I moved out. Call me day or night if you need anything, she said at the door. And Jessica, your grandmother would be very proud of how you're handling this. After she left, I felt steadier. Having someone from Grandma Elena's generation validate my decisions meant more than I could express. I finished my sandwich and cleaned up the kitchen, then heard the rumble of a large truck pulling up outside. The movers had arrived. 3 men climbed out of the moving truck, all wearing matching navy blue shirts with the Riverside Moving and Storage logo. The one who had been driving approached me with a clipboard and an easy smile. Jessica Martinez. I'm Danny. We spoke on the phone. I shook his hand and confirmed my identity, feeling a strange mix of nervousness and determination. Danny was probably in his early 40s, with sun-weathered skin and the build of someone who spent his days lifting heavy furniture. His crew consisted of 2 younger guys, one tall and lanky, the other stocky and muscular, both looking ready to work. Thanks for getting here so quickly, I said, gesturing toward the house. Everything I need moved has a sticky note on it. I have a detailed inventory list, if you need it. Danny glanced at his crew, then back at me. Before we start loading, I need to confirm this is all your personal property. We don't get involved in domestic disputes or situations where ownership is questionable. I appreciate your business, but we have to protect ourselves legally. I had anticipated this question and pulled out my phone, showing him the folder of photographs I had created. Every item tagged has a matching receipt showing I purchased it with my own funds. I can provide documentation for anything you want to verify. Danny scrolled through a few photos, comparing them to the receipts, then nodded with satisfaction. That works for me. Let's get you loaded up. His crew grabbed dollies and moving blankets from the truck, and I led them inside. We started in the living room. The 2 younger movers wrapped my charcoal gray sofa in thick blankets, securing them with tape, then maneuvered it carefully through the front door. That sofa had been a significant purchase for me, something I had saved for over months, because I wanted quality furniture that would last. Watching it being carried out felt surreal, like I was dismantling my life piece by piece, but it also felt right. This was mine. I had earned it. Vanessa had no claim to it. The coffee table went next, followed by the entertainment center. Danny personally handled the flat-screen television, a 55-inch Samsung I had bought during a Black Friday sale 2 years ago. He wrapped it carefully in a specialized box they had brought along, patting it extensively. "That's a nice TV," he commented. "You don't see too many people willing to move these instead of just leaving them." "I would have been willing if I were leaving it for someone who deserved it," I said before I could stop myself. "But I'm not." Danny gave me a knowing look, but didn't press for details. His crew worked efficiently, moving through the house with practiced ease. They loaded my bedroom furniture next, disassembling the bed frame and wrapping the mattress in protective plastic. My dresser, which was solid wood and weighed a ton, required both younger movers working together. They hauled it down the stairs with careful coordination, and I followed anxiously, worried they might damage the hardwood floors I had refinished last year. In the kitchen, removing the appliances proved more complicated. The refrigerator required disconnecting the water line for the ice maker. Danny asked if I had turned off the water supply, and I admitted I hadn't thought of that. He located the shutoff valve under the sink and handled it himself, then helped his crew ease the heavy refrigerator away from the wall. There were marks on the floor where it had sat for 2 years, a ghostly outline of its presence. The dishwasher required actual removal from its built-in cabinet space, which Danny accomplished with a power drill and about 15 minutes of work. "This is technically a built-in appliance," he noted. "You sure you have the right to remove it?" "I bought it and paid for the installation myself," I said firmly. "It's not staying." He shrugged and continued working. "Fair enough." Soon the dishwasher was loaded onto a dolly and wheeled out to the truck, leaving a gaping empty space under the kitchen counter. Patricia was going to lose her mind when she saw this. The thought gave me a grim sense of satisfaction. The washer and dryer from the laundry room required disconnecting both water and electrical hookups. The stocky mover handled that, while Danny and the tall kid loaded other items. Within an hour, the main living spaces of the house were starting to look bare. The walls still had my paint on them, the floors still had my refinishing work, but the furniture and appliances that made it functional were disappearing into the moving truck. It was like watching a body being stripped of flesh, leaving only bones behind. My converted garage studio took the longest because of all the equipment and the care required to protect my professional tools. Danny seemed particularly impressed by the setup. "You run your business from here?" he asked, looking at my custom desk and multi-monitor computer system. "I'm a graphic designer," I explained. "This is my primary workspace. I meet clients here, do all my design work here. This studio represents my entire career." He nodded with understanding. "Then you definitely need to take this with you. Can't build a business without your tools." They packed my computer equipment with extraordinary care, wrapping each monitor in bubble wrap, securing my hard drives in padded boxes, coiling cables neatly. My graphics tablet, which had cost me over $1,000, went into its original box that I had thankfully kept. The custom desk had to be partially disassembled to fit through the garage door, which Danny handled with the same power drill he had used on the dishwasher. My filing cabinets, full of client contracts and project files, were loaded as is, after being secured with tape to keep the drawers from sliding open. The small sofa where clients sat during consultations was actually a sleeper sofa I had specifically chosen for that dual purpose. The stocky mover tested its weight and whistled. "This thing is solid. You could use this as a guest bed." "That's the idea," I said. "Versatility." He grinned and helped his coworker haul it onto a dolly. By 3:30 in the afternoon, my entire life was packed into the Riverside moving truck. Danny did a final walkthrough with me, checking his inventory list against what we had loaded. "We've got 32 items total, including furniture, appliances, boxes, and equipment. Does that match your count?" I reviewed my own list and confirmed it did. Danny handed me a carbon copy of the inventory sheet. "Keep this with your receipts. If anyone questions what you took, You have a complete record. Where are we delivering? I gave him the address of a storage facility in North Austin that I had called earlier and rented a unit from. I wasn't moving everything to Nicole's spare room. She didn't have space for all of this. The storage facility would hold my belongings until I figured out my next permanent living situation. Nicole's place was just for me and my immediate necessities. Danny and his crew drove off with my possessions, and I stood in the driveway watching the truck disappear down the tree-lined street. The house behind me felt like a shell now, empty and echoing. I walked back inside and looked at what remained. The bones of the renovations I had done were still visible. The cream-colored paint on the living room walls, the refinished hardwood floors, the updated light fixtures. But without furniture, without the personal touches that made it a home, it looked cold and unwelcoming. Perfect for Vanessa, I thought bitterly. I spent the next hour taking more photographs, documenting the empty spaces where my furniture had been, the disconnected appliance hookups, everything. Then I packed my personal items into my car, clothes, toiletries, my laptop, important documents, and Grandma Elena's old coffee mug, carefully wrapped in a towel. I took one last walk through the house, saying goodbye to a place that had been my home for 8 years, a place I had loved and nurtured and believed would always be mine. In my grandmother's old bedroom, which Robert and Patricia had taken over after they moved in, I paused. This room had been hers for decades, where she had slept beside my grandfather, where she had eventually slept alone after he passed, where she had spent her final years before moving to hospice care. I remembered visiting her here, sitting on the edge of her bed while she told me stories about her childhood in South Texas, about meeting my grandfather at a dance hall in San Antonio, about building a life together in this house. She had wanted me to have this place. Nicole had confirmed it, the will was clear. But Robert and Patricia had stolen that legacy from me, had let me believe I was helping family, when really I was being exploited. The betrayal was so deep, it felt like a physical wound in my chest. I left the bedroom and closed the door, then walked out of the house, for what I thought might be the last time. I locked the front door with the key that had been mine for 8 years. I stood on the wide front porch, where I had sat with Grandma Elena countless times, where we had watched thunderstorms roll in during Texas springs, where she had told me this would always be my home. The porch swing swayed slightly in the breeze. I had repaired that swing 2 summers ago, replacing the rusted chains and sanding down the wooden seat before applying fresh stain. Another improvement Vanessa would benefit from, without deserving it. I got in my car and drove to Nicole's apartment in downtown Austin, my hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly. The afternoon traffic was brutal, giving me too much time to think. My phone kept buzzing with texts, but I ignored them. I knew they were probably from Robert or Patricia, maybe demanding to know where I was, or why I wasn't home. Let them wonder, let them come back to find the house, stripped of everything I had contributed. Let them try to explain that to Vanessa when she arrived expecting a furnished home. Nicole's apartment was in a modern building near the Capitol, all glass and steel, and expensive views. She had done well for herself working at the law firm, much better than my freelance income, and her place reflected that success. She buzzed me up, and when I walked through her door carrying my first load of belongings, she pulled me into a tight hug. "You did it," she said. "You actually did it. How do you feel?" I set down the boxes I was carrying, and had to think about the question, how did I feel? Exhausted, angry, sad, relieved, vindicated. All of those emotions swirling together into something I couldn't quite name. "I feel like I just burned down my entire life," I said finally. "But I also feel like I'm finally standing up for myself." Nicole squeezed my shoulder. "That's exactly what you're doing. And I'm proud of you. Let's get the rest of your stuff from the car, and then we need to talk strategy." We made several trips up and down the elevator, hauling suitcases and boxes. Nicole's spare room was small, but comfortable, decorated in minimalist style, with a queen bed and a desk. "This is your space for as long as you need it," she said. No pressure to rush into finding an apartment. Take your time and find something you actually want, not just something out of desperation. I thanked her, feeling overwhelmed by her generosity. After everything with Robert and Patricia, having someone actually support me unconditionally meant everything. Once we had everything unloaded, Nicole made us both strong gin and tonics, and we sat at her kitchen counter with her laptop open between us. "Okay," she said, pulling up several documents. "I got the certified copy of your grandmother's will from the county clerk today." She pushed a paper across to me, and I read through it with shaking hands. The legal language was dense, but the meaning was crystal clear. Elena Martinez, being of sound mind and body, hereby bequeaths the property located at the Hyde Park address to her granddaughter, Jessica Maria Martinez, to have, and to hold in perpetuity. There it was in black and white, notarized and official. Grandma Elena had wanted me to have the house. Not my parents, not Robert and Patricia, not Vanessa. Me. I felt tears sliding down my cheeks as I read her signature at the bottom of the document, her handwriting shaky but determined. She had been in her late 70s when she signed this, already feeling the effects of the illness that would eventually take her, but she had made sure to put her wishes in writing. "This changes everything," I said, looking up at Nicole. "They can't give the house to Vanessa if it legally belongs to me." Nicole nodded, but her expression was cautious. "In theory, yes, but there are complications. Your grandmother passed away 3 years ago. During that time, no one executed this will or transferred the property title. Technically, the house is still in your grandmother's estate, which should have gone through probate. The fact that it didn't suggests someone deliberately avoided that process, probably because they knew the will would surface." "So what do we do?" I asked. Nicole took a sip of her drink and pulled up another document. "We file to probate the estate now. Even though it's years late, we present the will to the court and request that the property be transferred to you as the legal heir. We also file a claim for your financial contributions to the property, establishing that you have been maintaining and improving an asset that rightfully belongs to you. It's going to get complicated, and Robert and Patricia are going to fight it, but we have a strong case." "How long will this take?" Nicole grimaced. "Months probably. The legal system moves slowly, especially with contested estates, but Jessica, here's the important part. While this is being settled, they can't legally evict you from the property. You have a right to be there as the named heir. They gave you 48 hours, but that ultimatum has no legal standing. You could technically go back there right now and refuse to leave." I thought about that option and immediately rejected it. "I can't go back there," I said. "Not after what they did. I can't sit at the same table with them, sleep under the same roof, pretend everything is normal while we battle this out in court. I would lose my mind." Nicole understood. "Then you stay here, and we fight this from a distance. But we do need to send them formal notification that you're contesting the ownership and invoking your—" "I'll draft that letter tonight. We'll send it certified mail, so there's proof they received it." "What about Vanessa?" I asked. "When does she get here?" Nicole pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot of a text conversation. "I actually reached out to your sister this afternoon, pretending to be catching up. She's flying in tomorrow evening. She thinks she's going to walk into a fully furnished house that's hers to claim. Instead, she's going to find empty rooms and a legal mess." I couldn't help but laugh, even though the sound was bitter. My sister was in for the shock of her life. She had probably already been planning how to redecorate, which furniture to keep, and which to sell, maybe thinking about whether to live there herself or rent it out for income. All those plans were about to crumble. Nicole and I spent the next several hours working on the legal documents. She drafted a formal letter to Robert and Patricia, citing the will and notifying them of my intent to claim the property. She drafted a separate letter to Vanessa, informing her that the house was not legally available for her to inherit, and that any attempt to take possession would be contested. She created an affidavit detailing my financial contributions, which I would need to sign and get notarized. The list was extensive. Mortgage payments, totaling $67,200. Property tax payments, totaling $9,800. Renovation costs, including the kitchen remodel, electrical updates, and roof replacement totaling $20,432. It went on, painting a picture of someone who had treated the property as her own because she had believed it was her family home. By the time we finished, it was almost 8 at night. My phone had been buzzing periodically throughout the evening, and I finally looked at it. 15 missed calls from Patricia, 8 from Robert, 12 text messages. I opened the texts and read through them, my stomach churning. The first few were confused. Where are you? Are you okay? Then they became demanding. Jessica, we need to talk. Call us immediately. Then angry, what have you done to the house? How dare you take our belongings? Then threatening, you're going to regret this. We will involve the police. Theft is a crime. That last text made my blood boil. Theft. I had taken only what I had purchased with my own money. I had documentation for every single item. They were the thieves, stealing my grandmother's house and my inheritance. I showed the texts to Nicole, who read them with a tight expression. Don't respond, she advised. Any communication with them at this point should go through me. Forward me all of these texts. They're actually helpful because they show consciousness of guilt. If the items were truly theirs, they wouldn't be this upset about you taking them. I forwarded the texts and blocked Robert and Patricia's numbers. I couldn't handle reading any more of their messages. They had no right to make me feel guilty, no right to act like victims, when they were the ones who had lied, and manipulated, and betrayed me. Nicole ordered takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant, and we ate pad Thai, while watching mindless television, trying to decompress from the intensity of the day. But I couldn't really relax. My mind kept spinning, imagining what was happening at the house right now. Robert and Patricia had probably returned from San Antonio to find the empty rooms. I pictured Patricia's face when she walked into the living room and saw bare walls, no furniture, just space. I imagined Robert going to the kitchen and discovering the missing appliances, the disconnected hookups. Were they panicking? Were they calling Vanessa to break the news? Were they scrambling to figure out how to furnish the house before she arrived tomorrow? Part of me felt guilty for the chaos I had created, but a larger part of me felt justified. They had created this situation by lying to me, by hiding Grandma Elena's will, by planning to steal my inheritance and give it to someone who didn't deserve it. That night, I lay in Nicole's spare bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep, despite my exhaustion. Tomorrow Vanessa would arrive in Austin, expecting to claim her new house. Instead, she would walk into a nightmare, and I would be here, safe in Nicole's apartment, waiting to see how it all unfolded. My phone was still blowing up, with texts from blocked numbers, the notifications piling up silently. I knew I should turn the phone off completely, but I couldn't. Some part of me needed to witness the fallout, even secondhand. Around midnight, Nicole knocked softly on the door and peeked in. "You still awake?" she whispered. I sat up and nodded. She came in and sat on the edge of the bed. "Talk to me, what are you thinking?" I pulled my knees up to my chest. I keep wondering if I'm doing the right thing, if I'm being vindictive, or justified. If Grandma Elena would approve of how I'm handling this. Nicole was quiet for a moment, then spoke carefully. "Your grandmother left you that house because she trusted you to take care of it and honor what it represented. But she also would have wanted you to take care of yourself. You can't let people exploit you in the name of family loyalty. That's not what family is supposed to be." "I know," I said softly, "but it still hurts. It hurts so much that they would do this to me." Nicole squeezed my hand. "Of course it hurts. Betrayal always hurts, especially when it comes from people you trusted, but pain doesn't mean you're wrong. Sometimes doing the right thing is painful, that doesn't make it less right." She left me with that thought, and eventually I drifted into an uneasy sleep, my dreams full of empty rooms, and my grandmother's disappointed face. The next morning, I woke to sun streaming through unfamiliar windows, and a moment of disorientation before I remembered where I was. Nicole's apartment, not my home in Hyde Park, not the house I had lived in for 8 years. I grabbed my phone and saw that I had 37 new text notifications from blocked numbers, plus several voicemails. I deleted them all without reading or listening. Whatever Robert, Patricia, or possibly Vanessa had to say, I didn't want to hear it. Not yet. Nicole had already left for work, but she had left a note on the kitchen counter, coffee in the pot, bagels in the fridge, meeting with senior partner this morning, about your case. We'll update you at lunch, you've got this. I poured coffee and sat at her breakfast bar, feeling strange and untethered. For the past 3 years, my mornings had followed a predictable routine: wake up in my Hyde Park bedroom, make coffee in the kitchen. I had renovated, work in my converted garage studio. Now everything was disrupted. My belongings were in a storage unit. I was staying in someone else's apartment. My entire life had been upended in less than 48 hours. But I had my laptop, and I had client work to do. One of the few good things about being a freelance graphic designer was that I could work from anywhere. I sat up at Nicole's dining table and tried to focus on a logo design project for an Austin tech startup. The work was mindless in a good way, letting me lose myself in color palettes and typography choices, not thinking about family drama or legal battles or empty houses. Around 11, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was Robert or Patricia calling from a different phone, but something made me pick up. Hello, a woman's voice, sharp and familiar, cut through the line. Jessica, it's Vanessa, we need to talk, right now. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.